Hi, I'm Greg, the CEO of Nodes and Links. You're about to learn how to check the quality of your plan using the Nodes and Links AI platform. By the end of this course, you'll know how to run logic checks, review the build strategy, analyze the forward wave, and calculate the predictive accuracy of your plan. Please enjoy, like, and comment.
Before we start anything, we need to make sure that we're analyzing the right plan. If we go into the home screen on the Nodes and Links AI platform, we can go to this icon saying schedule information here. If we click on this, it'll tell us what the current baseline is and the selected schedule we're in. It will tell us the file name of which we can copy, the upload date, the upload individual, and the last edit date, which is the data date. We need to be able to check that we're analyzing the right plans. This is how we do it.
So first things first, we want to find the logic checks. When you enter your project, you will land on your home screen. On your home screen here, you have got a tab called How Good Is My Plan? This details your DCMA and additional check scores. By clicking on View Health here, or by clicking on Health to the left on the tab, it will take you to the health screen where we'll have those checks. The screen looks like this. At this point, we can start to analyze the logic of our schedule. Before we start analyzing the activities and interdependencies within our schedule, we need to set our thresholds. And this can be done on the top right where it says Configure. So if we click here, it brings up the configurations of every single check in the system. Now, we can do a few things. We can enable or disable checks because, for example, I might not want to track missing logic going through a program. I can turn on different filters, and I can set threshold levels. For activities that have a numerical value associated with them, for example, high float, I can set whether or not I'm using absolute or relative values, and I can set days and times. To save these, I just click Save in the bottom right. Once I've set my thresholds, now I can go in and start doing my checks. And we'll start with the DCMA 14-point analysis, which we can find here. Now what we can see is every single check and whether or not the result is a pass or a fail based on our criteria. If we click into one, for example, missing logic, it will tell us all of the activities that break this check and why they break this check. In this case, it will be predecessors or successor counts. There's two unique things about the health screen in the Nodes and Links system. The first is this element where we can isolate exactly what is at fault and why. So for example, if I go to high float here, it will give us the high float values. The second is that we are actually able to segment it by various means. So in this case, we're able to segment all the way down into the WBS structure. And we're also able to filter and add columns to the table. So for example, I can say I'm only interested in high float activities that break the check within construction, within the independent retail unit, which are these, that start and finish between these dates. So I can do a search, or here I can say is equals, greater than, less than, or within a range. What I can also then do is I can download this table by clicking on the export button so that I have a record of it. What this enables me to do is to send out information to multiple team members so multiple people can be working on the schedule at one point in time.
In addition to the DCMA 14-point checks, we also have 16 additional checks, which are here below. Now, these additional checks have been ones that have been asked for by core customers all around the world. To understand what these checks are, we can simply click on them. And then if we go into Configure, it will describe what these are up here. So for example, if I go down to isolated networks, this is the fraction in terms of a percentage of activities that are neither isolated nor members of the largest component of the activity network. So we can do a number of additional checks here, go to our schedule quality. My personal favorites are isolated networks because then what I can do is click on visual and see the entire project as a network. So we can see here that there's elements of this project which are around project period and possessions that aren't connected to any major milestone in the project at all, such as mobilize project team or plan completion, which are the largest interconnected milestones. My other favorite ones are circular logical dependencies, because I'm a fan of Doctor Who, and if that's true, then we can blow back in time, and as late as possible constraints. Finally, writing data date. The reason I like writing data date as much as I do is because as updated plans come in, I want to see if we're just pressing F9 and rescheduling things forward, as opposed to actually planning them in sequence. So now we've got our DCMA 14-point checks and our 16 additional checks. We've also checked that this is the right schedule. Now what we can do is start to go into the thinking behind the schedule and check its structure. And we can check its structure in two ways. The first way is to check the coding behind the schedule. So to do this, we go into progress and we go into track. And within this, in the top right, we are able to select any hierarchy of the program. So this program has a main WBS and 4 activity code structures, an activity code WBS, a CBS, an OBS, and a possession. Within this WBS, we have the breakdown here. So for example, within construction, the breakdown goes to these components. We've got highways, setup, demobilization, retail unit, etc. Now, this is the WBS, ABS, CBS, and OBS structures. What we could also do is check the activity ID codes, which are here. So for example, within independent retail unit, we can go in and see what is the coding convention that is being used. In here, we can see it's all GGs and CEs. What we can do by this is to build out an understanding of how the coding structure has been broken down from top level down and how the matrix has been formed. Once we understand the structure of the plan, we need to understand how the elements flow and interconnect, which is the physical manifestation of our build strategy. The simplest way we do this today is via the Gantt chart. So you can go in to the AIQS array into RISC, and it has an active Gantt chart where you can turn on links, so the interdependencies, and turn them off here for simplicity. And you can navigate the different WBS components at all levels. But we can take it further than this. We want it simpler. By going on schedule and on paths, we can find the top 5 paths to any activity or milestone in the entire program. And all you have to do is type in the name or find it here. I've just done it to M4048, which is a delivery milestone. We can, if we wish, also set pass-through activities. So we can say, how do we get to activity A going through activity B? We can analyze these by flat or tree structures. And by hovering over here, we can see how many activities and how many days of free float are in this path. So for example, this one has 60 activities and 5 days of free float. We can export these here, and it is a smart export where we can select what we want to export and have it as PDF or PNG. But we can go even further than that. By clicking on Visualize and Roadmap, there's a very unique feature here that can help us tell a story, and it looks like this. What this is an automatic diagram generator. It doesn't go down to the activity level. It's not supposed to. It shows how the different WBSs flow and connect with each other over time. And I'll give you an example. By clicking this button, I can hide WBS. Now, what I'm interested to do is to see how construction and commissioning relate to each other. So I'm going to remove all of these different elements. So we've only got these two. I'm then going to expand construction here. Then I'm going to go on my hand and I'm going to start moving it around. Now I've got my timeline here that I can align things to, but what I can very easily see is that it's only station extension that connects to commissioning and handover, and you've got 5 links going into commissioning and handover, and 1 link coming back out, back into station extension. So let's dive down even deeper. And then, again, I'll expand station extension here. So we can actually see that it is phase 4 construction and fit out that is going into commissioning and handover. Now again, if I go down even further and I expand out phase 4, we're getting in all the different works. Now I can see this is where the complexity comes from. So there's a bridge lift, some gates, and a new station interchange, which leads to commissioning and handover. And I can see how all of these are profiled over time. And by clicking here, I can export this chart. There'll be another video linked to this, which explains how to use these 3 screens in much greater detail. But what we use this to do is to explain strategy to senior leadership, and you can too. One additional thing that we need to check to ensure that the schedule is of quality is how extreme the forward wave is. So we've all been there, where we can put detailed planning into the most recent period of time, but things near the back end of the program are at a much higher level just because, for example, design has not been completed. We can check that in the system. So if we go into progress and into track and go to activities per day, we can see what the plan versus actual is for activities per day. So for example, the baseline of this program was to have a large amount of activity early on and then going down into lower levels of activity. What has actually happened is this level, and the current plan, so the forecast from the update, is saying that this will be the profile. Now, obviously, we can do that at any level. So if I click on construction, it will show me the activities per day for the construction WBS. And any of these bars can be manipulated. So I can just say, I'm interested in this component here, and I'm interested in these components there. It is your choice. Now, for the data scientist in you, there is an additional screen. You can go to Visualize and to Connections. And what this does is it gives you an area where you can go down into more detail. What I'd be looking at here is active tasks. So I can see the profile of active tasks at any one point in time. This program does not have a forward wave. I know this because I've examined the program in more detail, so I've confirmed it. But here we can see that actually the active task limit is generally consistent across time and creates a nice S-curve throughout it. Obviously, commissioning and handover at the end has a lower element of activity, but in general, the bulk of the program is consistent. If we have multiple versions of a schedule, either because we're getting updates or because we're in the bidding phase and we're doing multiple iterations of the schedule, we need to understand how the scope is changing, because scope changing is a key indicator of a quality of a plan. We can very easily do that in the Nodes and Links AI platform. Firstly, we can go to Progress and Track and go to the list of activities. What this does is it shows all the activities in the current program and it compares them against the baseline. So in version 13, I am comparing against version 3, the baseline. If I wanted to change that, I'd simply click these 3 dots and click Change to Baseline. Now what we can see is here for this milestone, M4014, the delivery was 103 days later than the baseline. It's been actualized and it's been completed. But we can see for these activities here that they don't exist in the baseline. What the system does here is it compares the unique activity ID codes between the 2 schedules to be able to compare them. We can isolate, obviously, by different coding structures. We can go down as deep as we want into those coding structures. And if we want to run some numbers and analysis on it, we can download the activity file that we're currently looking at and analyze it in Excel or Power BI. But if we want to take it even further, we can go on Compare on the left-hand side of the screen and run an exhaustive comparison. So I'm comparing version 13 to version 10. All I have to do is select it and click Compare. There'll be another video that goes into the exhaustive comparisons that this does. But for the sake of scope change here, what I can see is there's 45 new activities and 2 new milestones. I can dive into these if I wish by clicking here. I can also see that there's 48 deleted activities and 4 deleted milestones. Now I know this program has about 1,500 activities. So with an addition, let's say of around 50 for ease of math, and a removal of around 50, I can get a general ratio of how scope is changing between these two programs. So it would be 50 divided by 1,500 is the addition, and the same with the removal. And from that, we can start to understand how the quality of our program in terms of scope change might drive in the future. To round off checking the quality of the plan, we can look at its predictability. Now, this won't be something you'd want to look at if it is a baseline schedule because you've got no actuals in the data. But if you've got a schedule with actuals in the data, a reflection of the quality of the plan is, number one, if scope has changed in the plan, so the original plan is not reflective of the scope of work being done in the future. And number two is the durations that have been associated, so the predictability and when tasks are being done. So we said we're going to do these 5 tasks on Monday. Have they been done, and have they been done to the correct durations, resources, etc.? We can very easily analyze that in the Nodes and Links AI platform. To start with, we can go to the home screen, and we can go down to the bottom to how many activities have been delayed. And we can start to analyze this. So we can see that in this schedule, we can see that 6.2% have been delayed by more than 5 days, 4.8 have been delayed by more than 10 days, and 2.3 have been delayed by more than 20. But we can go down further. If we go into progress and track, we can go to the list of activities we just analyzed and start looking here. So what I would do is I would filter on all the ones that have been completed. I'm ordering by start date just by clicking here, but you can do it any which way you want. And I can see, for example, that all of these have been delivered on time. This one has been delivered late. These have been delivered late. These are scope creep. And I'm sure if we find down these, I'm sure we could probably find one that's been delivered early. Yes, here, this has been delivered early. We can obviously isolate it, just like we've done before, by coding structure or by the depth of the coding structure. So for example, in construction, there's a lot of late activities here and a lot of scope creep. If we wanted to do a more detailed analysis, we can download this data. If we didn't want to do the analysis ourselves, what we could do is click on the AI Predict and go to the overview screen. So there'll be a longer video on how the prediction works and how to leverage the AI prediction screen. But the key thing here is if we go to the top right and say how prediction works, it gives us data on this schedule. So here we can actually say here that 35% of all activities to date have been delayed. And the average delay of these activities is 22 days. So we can start to get an understanding of whether or not we're being pessimistic or optimistic with regards when we're going to do specific activities and how long they're going to take. If you combine that with the health checks that we looked at previously, especially the riding day-to-day health check, you've got a very good view of whether or not the plan is reflective of what's happening in reality. A very wise man once said to me, "For creation, there is freedom, but for repetition, there's process." So I'll talk you through my process that I've just gone through in this set of videos. First of all, I checked I was looking at the right plan by going to the home screen and clicking on the information within the schedule. Then I performed my health checks. I did my DCMA checks, setting everything up with thresholds beforehand, and I did my additional checks. From my additional checks, I wanted to understand the coding of the plan. I wanted to understand how the WBS, ABS, CBS, and OBS had been coded, and how the activity IDs have been coded, because then I could correlate that with the documentation that the organization would have. From this, what I care is about build strategy. So I want to know how things have been constructed to flow into and out of each other. Then I wanted to know how much detail had been put in the near term compared to the end term, which is the forward wave. And then I analyzed the scope accuracy. So given that I was getting updates, I wanted to know how much change was happening to the underlying plan that was happening over time. And then lastly, predictability. So you see how I went from a check that I'm looking at the right plan, check the data quality, understand the underlying data structure, so the WBS and the activity coding, into the strategy and the forward wave, because forward wave is an element of strategy, into when I'm getting updates, I'm looking at scope change and predictability. What I would highly advise is that you have a look at the processes set out in your organization. And if you don't have a process set out in your organization, maybe take this one as a template and use it as the very simple step flows going through. Because again, with repetition, we need process, and process creates simplicity.